Hi everybody and welcome back. So it has come to our attention that there are a lot of new chicken owners that might hear some terms that they don't know what they mean. So we thought we'd bring you a video real quick just to kind of talk about what some of those terms mean. I'm going to leave in the description below an alphabetical list of everything I go over. So if you're wanting to look for a specific term of what a word means, it's going to be an alphabetical list below. You can just click on the timestamp and it'll take you right to what I'm talking about. My goats are here to keep me company, and I got chickens running around. I got chickens running around in the background. So let's get started. Broiler. Broiler is a chicken that you buy specifically for meat, and a lot of times that will be the Cornish cross. You'll hear a lot of people say we're buying meat chickens, or we're buying Cornish cross, or we're buying broilers. Those are chickens that you get specifically just to raise to process for meat. Layers are chickens that you get specifically just to lay eggs. So if you like to have fresh farm eggs, you want layers. You may hear the term dual purpose or dual breed. Those are chickens that are good for meat and for laying eggs. Here on our homestead, about 90% of our chickens are dual purpose chickens. So we use them as layers, and about the 2 to 3 year mark, they do become meat birds. They're layers that grow a little bit larger so that they are good for meat, but they don't grow as big and as hefty as a broiler. The term heritage breed it's a chicken sired by an American Poultry Association standard breed established prior to the mid 20th century. Here on our homestead, we pretty much get all heritage breed chickens just because we like to keep the breed standard going. There's no downside to a heritage breed. It's just what they call them. They haven't been crossbred for specific reasons. For instance, the Cornish cross, which is bred specifically to become a broiler. It is not a heritage breed. You don't breed them at all. You just get them, you raise them, and then they go to freezer camp. You may have heard the term Bantam before, and that just basically means it's a chicken about a quarter of the size of a standard size chicken. We have one here. It's our Silky named Fresh. He is a Bantam. So besides Silkies, there are several breeds that are Bantam breeds. They're just smaller chickens. On that note, there are ornamental breeds. Now, ornamental breeds are chickens that you get specifically because of their beauty and how pretty they are, or how cute or interesting they are. My camera might be shaking because I have a goat trying to eat it. Now, a lot of ornamental breeds are used for show purposes. There are some out there that are just stunning. They have these long tails, or the Polish ones with their hackles that stand up. So there are quite a few ornamental breeds, and they're used specifically for show purposes. Now, I'm pretty sure you know the term chick, which is a baby chick, also called a peep. And I'm not talking little marshmallow things, but that is where Peeps, the marshmallow yummies, got their name. Peep is also the same name for a chick. Some of the terms you may hear deal specifically with roosters. This is Twilight. He is not happy at all, but he is our Easter egger breeder, and right now he is separated from everyone else until we set up a new area. We've got some other roosters, but they're headed to freezer camp, and so we're just keeping him separated so there's no fights. So one of the terms you may hear is, what is a cock or a roo? And that's real easy. It's a rooster. Roosters have a few things that are specific to them versus a hen. So he is a cock or a roo or a rooster. That means he is over a year old. A rooster that's under a year old might look the same when they start getting up in age, but a cockerel is a rood that is under 1 year. There is another term you may hear, you won't hear it very often, it's capon, and that is a rooster that has been neutered either chemically or physically.
Don't know how that happens though. I haven't found them.
It's not something we practice here in the US very much, but you may hear that term. So capon is, again, neutered, and they're normally force fed, and it's just to get them ready for meat. This is one of our New Hampshires, and there are 3 terms you may hear when it comes to hens: pullet, hen, and old Biddy. So a pullet is a hen that is under a year old. A lot of people say pullet just in general for chickens, roosters, and hens that are under a year old, but the technical term is hens that are under a year old. A hen is, of course, one that's over a year old, and then an old Biddy, you may hear that term quite often, and I think I've maybe said it a few times. And an old Biddy is exactly that. It's a hen that's old. I normally start calling them old biddies when they get about 3, and we actually have none left. We just lost our last old biddy last week, unfortunately. But those are terms you may hear referred to the age of a hen. So what do you call a group of chickens that are all hatched together? That is called a brood. If you get several chicks, say you go to Tractor Supply or to a breeder and you order a whole bunch of different kinds of chicks. They're not considered a brood because they weren't all hatched together. A brood is a clutch that is hatched all together. A clutch is a group of eggs that are being sat on by a broody hen. That's the pile of eggs, essentially. Candling is when you take an egg and that you believe is fertilized. After a short time, you candle it. Basically, you put it on a light in a certain way to see how the chick inside the egg is progressing. And shining that light through it gives you that indication of, hey, this is a viable egg, or there's no chick inside. A few terms you may also hear regarding the sex of a chicken is sexing, and that's the process of determining whether it's going to be a male or a female. Sexed would be they're separated by gender, male or female. These are the easiest chickens to sex because their color determines their sex. So you may go to buy some chickens and it says sex linked. So determined by their color is whether they're male or female, and they're the easiest ones to sex out. Straight run means you bought chickens, you don't know whether they're male or female. You bought a bunch of chickens, and they may turn out to be hens, they may turn out to be roosters. It's just a straight run of chickens. Or you can buy just hens, or you can buy just roos. When you have baby chicks or you hatch baby chicks, you'll hear the term chick tooth, and this is just a little thing on the tip of their beak that actually just helps them break out of their shell. It's a little hard little knot on the tip of their beak, and it goes away. Chickens are interesting. So they have what's called a cloaca, or most people call it vent, and technically that's just their bum hole.
It's back here.
They do everything from that bum hole or vent. So they reproduce with that. That's where they lay their eggs and where they defecate from. When they get older like this, it's not an issue, but I'm sorry, I've got a chicken laying an egg in the background. Can you hear that? So when they're small chicks, you want to make sure you check their vent for what's called pasty butt, and that's just, you need to clean it off because it can get stopped up and it can kill the chick, unfortunately. So, but if you hear someone say check their vent, that's their bum hole. Just so you know. Some people call it a crop. Depending on how you've heard it, it's spelled crop, C-R-O-P. It's pronounced crop or crawl. Nobody asked you. If you're new to chickens, you may once in a while see, what is that growth on my chicken? And they will have this big bump right here. And it'll stick out. And that's when they've gorged on food. And it's called their crawl. And that is part of their digestive tract. It stores the food they've ingested before it continues on down. So when you hear someone talk about their crawl, that's what they're talking about. If it gets really bulged out, don't freak out at first. That just means they just got done eating a whole bunch of food. And if you see it's really pumped out and it's a hot day and you pick your chicken up fast, don't freak out if they spit out a bunch of water. It just means you put pressure on that and the water that they have in there just came out. So just be real careful that you don't push on it because they can come right back up.
Like, I've been up here too long. I want to play with everybody else.
Now from there it goes into the gizzard. And the gizzard is where they start crushing their food up. Chickens don't have teeth. They don't chew like we do. They eat pebbles and stones inside their gizzard, and it kind of does its little thing. It does its little thing to crush up the food so that they can finish the digestive process. Roosters have a very large comb as opposed to the different kinds of combs that hens will have. You have to be very careful, especially with roos in the winter. They can get frostbite on their combs. So just a little bit of knowledge that make sure you keep an eye out. So on hens, you'll see her comb looks a little different than the roo we showed you. It's a little smaller, and then her wattles are smaller. And there are different kinds of combs. There's straight combs, rose combs. So if you see different style combs, don't think there's something wrong with their chicken. It's just different breeds have different combs. Wattles are these little things that hang under their beak. It's just a fleshy growth, and they can be really big. If you see them on turkeys, you know, they're extremely large on turkeys. Roosters, they get bigger than a hen does, but it just gives them a bit of pretty appearance to make them more attractive to the girls. Now, shanks, all chickens have shanks. That is this part right above the foot. And while we have the foot up, let's talk about the spurs. Now, roosters have a spur right here on their leg. Be very careful. These can get extremely long and extremely sharp. You can file them down. You can actually clip them like you would your nails. They actually just pop off. Again, be very careful. They use it for fighting. They use them to hold on to the hen when they're breeding. So just be really careful. If you've got a very aggressive rooster that's coming after you, the spur is what's going to hit you in the back of the leg. When it comes to feathers, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about the different kinds of feathers. And roosters are a little different than hens when it comes to their feathers. They all have hackles. And hackle feathers are literally the ones right around the neck. You'll hear someone say they've got their hackles up. It's an old term. And that's literally when they poke these up because they're really mad. The difference, and one of the ways you can tell a roo from a hen before you actually know they're a roo or a hen, they're still young. A roo will have more pointed hackle feathers where a hen's are a little more rounded. There are down feathers. These are what you normally see on chicks. It's like fluff. Our silky roo actually has a lot of down feathers. It's a little, there are down feathers on a full-grown chick. It's these really soft ones under here. But normally, if you just look at a baby chick, Those are down feathers. So on this right here, these feathers right here are called primaries. They're stiff, and these are what aid them in flying. So when you go to clip a chicken's wings, you clip on one side only so that they're off balance, and you only clip these primary feathers.
Kind of like this.
You can see they're not really there versus her beautiful wing here. She's showing off too. Now, these down here are called saddle feathers, and for a rooster, these are longer, prettier, and pointier than a hen. These are what people use to make flies for fishing, and it's just part of the rooster's beautification.
To make them look good for the ladies.
Yeah, he got into a fight not too long ago, so they're not beautiful, but these long curling feathers on their tail are called sickles, and kind of like a Grim Reaper, a sickle, that's the shape. So that is specific to, these long curling ones are specific to a rooster, and you won't see long tail feathers like this on a hen. You may hear the term molting, and if you don't know what that is when chickens will shed their feathers to grow new feathers. And so if you notice that you've got a hen and her feathers are falling out, don't panic. She just may be molting, and it's just their way of starting anew. If you hear the term brooding period and you're not exactly sure what that means, that is from birth to fully feathered. That is a chick's brooding period, from the time they're born until they're fully feathered. They go through this adorable, fluffy, down feathered stage all the way up to a gorgeous, full-grown chicken. In that time, they go through a few molting stages and a really ugly teenager stage until they are out of that brooding period. Pipping is the actual act of what a chick is doing when they're coming out of that egg, using that tube. Dusting. This might be something you see your chickens do, and you can make them a dust bath, and we've got some videos coming up for that soon on the dust baths that we're making for our chickens. Or if you have a very sandy spot, you'll see that they'll just go make their own dust bath. And this is literally their bath, how they get clean. They'll roll around in the dust, it gets off all the little mites and insects, and it's how they clean themselves. Not just chickens, almost all birds do this. Once in a while, you will see your hen go broody, or you may hear someone use the term, my hen is broody right now. What that means is they just want to sit on eggs. And some breeds are more apt to be broody than others. Some could care less about it. They don't want to sit at all. They just lay the egg and they take off. Others will start laying eggs and they'll make themselves a little clutch and they will just sit. For instance, our silkies, our hen would sit, and she would sit so much to the point that we had to pick her up and put her in front of the food because she refused to eat, drink, or anything. So just so you know, if your chicken goes broody, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure that they have access to food and water, and probably separate them from the rest of the hens. So there are some really strange sounding words you may hear, and they have to do with diseases and conditions with chickens that you may want to keep your ear out for, or if you've heard them, you might not know exactly what they mean. So the first one is just called Unthrifty, and this is a bird that is just unhealthy, not putting on weight, just it's not thriving at all. And when that's the case, you need to separate that chicken from the rest of your flock to uncover the reasons of why they may be unthrifty. One of the most common ones is, I'm going to mess up this pronunciation, Coccidiosis. It's a parasite that it damages the walls of the intestines. It'll cause diarrhea, weight loss, and death. It spreads from one chicken to another just by contact with feces or ingestion. Another very common one is simply referred to as CRD, but it's chronic respiratory disease. And what you'll hear with that, or what you'll notice, sneezing or difficulty breathing, and this can be controlled by adding antibiotics to their water or their feed. Marek's disease is a very common one, and typically when you purchase chicks from a hatchery, you can have them vaccinated against this. It's a very common viral respiratory disease. And like I said, this can be prevented from getting your chicks vaccinated if you purchase them from a hatchery. I think it's $10 and they'll vaccinate all your chickens, or at least the hatchery we use, which is Cackle Hatchery, and it's $10 and they vaccinate all our chickens. Now, Newcastle's disease is similar. It's a... Did you see that rooster try to come attack me? Oh, pain in my rear. Newcastle's disease, similar to Marek's disease, is it's a respiratory infection. This can be taken care of through a series of vaccinations within your chicks, but it can spread through a flock very quickly. You may have heard some different terms regarding the feed for chickens. Now, there's feed, which is just a mix of whatever you're feeding them, whether you're feeding them scratch or grain or plant matter. They do love leftovers. Now, scratch itself is a mix of grains, corn, wheat, and so forth, and just mixed together to make a scratch, and they scratch at it, hence the term. And typically used for a treat. It's not their main source of food. You can buy chicken feed, which are pellets. There's all different ways you can feed your chickens. You can feed them directly from scraps from your garden or from your kitchen, but just make sure you research certain things they cannot eat. A lot of times, if you buy a scratch, it'll come with grit included. Grit you can just purchase and throw out on the ground for them. I'm keeping my eye on this rooster because he'll sneak up on me. But he's scratching, so. But you can feed grit directly to your chickens by just throwing some grit on the ground. This is essential for them because that's what they put in their gizzard to crush and grind up their food. It's not a term people use a lot anymore these days. It's called Fount or Fount. Nobody asked you. Essentially, this is just the watering device. A lot of people just say chicken water anymore, but once in a while you may hear that term. Litter is just the bedding material that's put in the coop and then their nest boxes that they scratch around to make themselves comfy, and it keeps their coop a little warmer in the winter, and it absorbs and covers up their dropping. Nest box is what the hen sits in to lay her eggs, so it's fairly self-explanatory, and you'll definitely hear a lot of people use the word roost. Roost is not only a verb of what they do, but it's also a noun of what it is. A roost is normally a stick or a pole of some type that they roost on. So it is a roost, and what they're doing is roosting. And you want that because it gives them a break from being flat-footed on the ground. They are a bird, so they do like to curl their talons around a roost. Coop, that's a fairly simple term you'll definitely hear. This is our coop right here. It's our chicken coop. And that's where they go in to roost at night. Run is a term you'll definitely also hear. You can free range your chickens for sure, but a lot of people do have a chicken run. Right now, our run is this enclosure, and it is quite simply that. It is an enclosure that the chickens stay within. If you're lucky, they stay within. So hopefully we were able to break down and give you a little insight on what some of those terms mean if you're new to chickens. Again, you can look in the description below if you're looking for a specific term. I've listed them out in alphabetical order. and you just click on that timestamp. It'll take you directly to where I talk about that word and the definition of it. I've also got it listed out separately down below in categories, so if you want to know about just the terms that deal with their feathers, that'll be listed in the category and you can click on that as well. If I mispronounced anything, I apologize, and absolutely if I missed anything, please leave that in the comments below so that others can catch up and find out those missed terms. Thank you so much for coming along. We appreciate you. Our chickens are saying have a great day. So on that note, I will talk to y'all next time. Take care.